Hello, everybody. Ark here, and today, what are you doing today? Oh yeah, today we're talking about the other Sans theories. We're continuing on our Undertale epic. Okay, so in the last episode we talked about how Sans should clearly be some type of god of the Undertale. But there are some other theories that we'll discuss that are more commonplace than that one. Let's start with one that a lot of people have, and that's in relation to another character, but actually, while not in the game, is not only spoken of throughout the game, but also actually can be found in the game's coding. WD Gaster, which is also known as Wingding Gaster. There's a component in the documents and files of the game called the Fun, I think it is. And when turned or set to a specific level or number, it can reveal characters who speak in the Wingding font. And one of those is WD Gaster, who is believed to be the original royal scientist before. What was her name? Alphys. Yeah. And a lot of theories about Sans and his powers and his abilities and his place in Undertale actually stem from the fact that WD Gaster is in the game's coding. And a lot of the stuff, for instance, in his genocide run, Sans, one of his attacks, the skull that just kind of goes in the in the middle of the screen. If you check it in the coding, it's called the Gaster Blaster, which WD Gaster, of course, which leads a lot of people to believe that, of course, the two had some type of relationship. Now, it's been highly speculated that Gaster could be anything from Sans and Papyrus's brother to Sans and Papyrus's father to Sans having worked under Gaster to even Sans and Papyrus actually being Gaster and Sans. Wait, did I say that? Oh, and I said it wrong. But the fact that Gaster could actually just be Sans and Papyrus when they're together, or like when they're whole. Let's go into the backstory of Gaster so you can get a bit more insight into this. Gaster was the royal scientist before Alphys. Gaster was working on a lot of experiments to further the technology of the underworld because, of course, the fact that they'd been out of touch with the world for so long, and a lot of what they were using was magical based. They didn't have a lot of technology. So the royal scientist W.D. Gaster worked extremely hard to try and update the underground to where it is now, where it uses a lot of technology, where you can see from the broadcast, the televisions, the ovens, stuff like that. And what was I saying? Yeah, my brain kind of went. But because of this, he was working on what is in the game known as the core. However, for whatever reason that occurred, W.D. Gaster fell into the core while working on it and was killed. Alphys was later promoted to the position of royal scientist, and the rest is history. Except that it's not. You see, W.D. Gaster is actually not mentioned in the game at all. As a matter of fact, the only instances where it's spoken of him, it's spoken about a certain person, not in any particular way, shape, or form about him in general. For instance, the fairy person thing that doesn't give a gender. A lot of these characters are genderless, but what's the name of the fairy guy? The fairy from the Greek mythology. I kind of want to just give him that name, but I can't remember what it is. I'll give him Nyx, just because I can't. But Nyx says, "Beware of the man who speaks in hands." Or is it gloves? I think it's hands. And, to most people, they're just like, what? And for a lot of people, they speculate that, it's Asgore because Asgore fights using the big old hands that come up the screen, like, and the fire that goes, da-da-da-da-da-da. But in actuality, he's actually speaking of the Wingding font, which uses a lot of hand fonts and stuff. It uses a lot of hands for the symbols of letters and whatnot. But other things that hint to him is the fact that nobody can remember the name of the royal scientist before Alphys. It's touched on once or twice, but not really, and the fact that he fell into the core is, I think, mentioned once. But most of your information actually ends up coming from the people. If you set the fun setting to, I think it's 20. I think it's 20. Then when you're in the Hotlands, various people, I think it's the Hotlands, and various people will come and talk to you, and then you can enter this room where Wingding Gaster is. Now, I think someone said, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% on this, do not quote me on this, but I think someone said that if you actually do that, though, it resets your whole game. Like, when you talk to him, it, resets the whole freaking game. But it's generally accepted that Wingding Gaster is, in fact, a part of the lore of the game. Now, why do I give you all this backstory? Because of the fact that a lot of people believe Wingding Gaster and Sans to be related. Like I told you about the Gaster Blaster. A lot of people believe that Wingding is actually a skeleton, and there are several theories behind that. One being that he is Sans and Papyrus's father. The reason that one could check out is because it would make a lot of sense as to why Sans is more delved into that world and Papyrus is not. If those two were connected, because of the fact that a lot of people will agree that Sans is actually the older brother and Papyrus is the younger brother, which would make a lot of sense considering the way Papyrus is. I'll get to that in a minute, though. A lot of people believe Wingding to be their brother. Now, this one makes a little less sense, as it would be a little harder for Papyrus to not know about him and Sans to know about him, but it's widely speculated that Sans has otherworldly abilities aside from what Papyrus is capable of. But my personal favorite, and the one I believe to be true, is the fact that if this were the route to be taken, is the fact that Sans and Papyrus are actually Wingding Gaster. That when he fell into the core, instead, when he got written out of the world, he actually was written in as two parts. And there's a lot of things in the game that support this. For instance, when you talk to the lady at the inn, she tells you that the Skeleton Brothers just showed up one day and they asserted themselves. Which goes to show that no one's actually aware of where they came from. No one's 100% sure how they got here. No one can give a firm explanation of where they came from. I mean, think about it. Everyone else in Undertale, or all of your main characters in Undertale, have a solid backstory that they either tell you or that's just known. For instance, Toriel is the queen. Oh, again, spoilers. Toriel is the queen. Asgore is the king. They've been ruling for years. Chara came from a village, and Asriel was their son. Alphys became the royal scientist. Has been working with them for years, and Undyne, since she was a child, has been training her life and became part of the head of the royal guard. So that's everyone's backstory and a little bit about them. But what about Sans and Papyrus? Sans actually gives you no details into his past whatsoever, aside from the hidden room. And Papyrus, well, the Great Papyrus is actually just the Great Papyrus. What explanation is needed? He's Papyrus. But the point being is that Either and or are not spoken for. So it could very well be explained that they're actually Winged and Gaster separated. And what more to support that? Think of their extremely differing personalities. They're actually two sides of the same coin. Sans is more laid back, but he's methodical. There's logic, there's a type of method to his madness, so to speak. He's cold, calculating, but he's generally an impassive type. Think of him as Winged and Gaster's logic. Logic doesn't do anything by itself. It just does. It notes, it calculates, and it's understanding. But that's it. That's all it can do. That's all it does, is just figure things out. It can't necessarily do anything. Not logic, not by itself. It needs desire, passion, drive. And that's Papyrus. That's all things that Papyrus can be. Papyrus is emotion. Papyrus is drive. Papyrus is the action. He doesn't really think, he just does. He goes with his gut feeling, his gut emotions, which can be shown throughout several times within the game to be very rampant. And he just does. And to further support this, Papyrus does a lot within the game, but he never thinks about what he does. He never puts any actual forethought to it. Whereas Sans doesn't do anything, but he's got everything figured out, but he doesn't do anything until the last possible moment where he literally says, I can't afford not to do anything anymore. Like, it's not an option. As long as doing nothing was an option, he will do it. But without drive, without passion, there's nothing he can do. Alright, that's it for this episode of Arc on Point, and we will see you guys next time. Next time we are going to talk about the backstory of Frist and Chara. Because there's some things that aren't explained in the game, but need to be explained, and we're going to explain them. Alright guys, subscribe for more if you want it, because there's going to be a lot more. Arc out. Bye-bye.